Hi, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I want to provide you with an update on the ongoing crisis in Cuba and how the US oil blockade has pushed the country to the brink of disaster. This isn't really a story about politics. It's not really a story about influence or control. This is a story about a country that is literally running out of time. But before we get into all of the details, could I ask anybody that hasn't subscribed yet to please hit that subscribe button? Really helps with the algorithm, also puts a smile on my face. Now, what's happening in Cuba right now is absolutely shocking. Cuba has always had economic problems. I've been talking about them for the past 5 years. There's been poverty, shortages, and inefficiency for decades. But what's being reported right now is on a completely different level. Over the last few months, the United States has effectively imposed an oil blockade on the country. And because Cuba relies heavily on imported oil to run its entire economy, everything is now starting to break down. Not slowly, but all at once. So let's start with the most obvious impact: electricity. It's been reported that the blackouts in the country are now lasting up to 22 hours every single day in some areas. Now, if you think about that for a moment, that means that people are only getting electricity for maybe 1 or 2 hours in a full 24-hour period. And in some regions, there's no electricity at all. Entire towns are going days without power. Now, when you lose electricity at that scale, this isn't just about the lights going out. Everything stops. Water pumps stop working. There's no running water. Refrigeration fails, so food goes off. Mobile networks drop out, so communication becomes almost impossible. Hospitals are forced onto backup generators if they have fuel to run them, and in many cases, they don't. And what we're seeing on the ground right now is society starting to unravel. There are reports from Havana of people searching through rubbish bins looking for food, and these aren't homeless people. These are ordinary people, ordinary families, teachers, workers. People are scavenging for anything that's edible, rotting vegetables, discarded food, whatever they can find. And this is happening in a country where that kind of desperation was almost unheard of until recently. Even during difficult periods, Cuba maintained a certain level of basic order, but unfortunately that's now breaking down. You've got rubbish piling up in the streets, not because nobody cares, but because the bin trucks don't have any fuel. You've got people queuing for hours just to withdraw cash, only to find that there's no money left in the machines. You've got bakeries limiting people to 1 piece of bread, and that's if there's any bread at all. And government ration shops, which are supposed to provide essential supplies, are often completely empty. The pharmacies, well, they've got empty shelves. Basic medicines are totally unavailable. People are literally asking strangers for things like paracetamol. And even if goods are available in private shops, most people simply can't afford them because wages in Cuba are incredibly low. Teachers in the country earn the equivalent of around £10 or around $13 per month, not per week or per day, per month. So even if products exist, they're out of reach. Now let's talk about food, because this is where it becomes a genuine humanitarian crisis. It's been reported that a huge proportion of the population is now living in extreme poverty, and many people are missing at least 1 meal per day. Some are relying entirely on charities just to survive. Charities that used to support the elderly and homeless are now feeding children, families, and working people. And even those charities are stretched to breaking point. So why is this happening? Because Cuba doesn't produce enough food to sustain itself. It relies heavily on imports, but imports require foreign currency, and foreign currency is disappearing. Which brings us to tourism, because tourism used to be one of the main lifelines for the Cuban economy. It brought in billions of dollars of hard currency, and that money was critical. It paid for fuel, food imports, medicine, everything. But now, tourism has effectively collapsed. And this is one of the most striking parts of what's happening. Havana, once full of visitors, is now almost empty. Tourist hotspots are totally deserted. Souvenir markets have no customers. Classic cars that used to take tourists around the city, that was one of the most memorable sights that you see when you'll go to Havana, they're sitting idle. Drivers are waiting, desperate for work, but there's no one there. Even the small details tell the story. Bands are playing in restaurants, but they've lost their audience. Hotels are open, but there are no guests. And the reason is a combination of factors. The blackout crisis, fuel shortages, flight disruptions, and wider geopolitical tensions. People simply aren't going to Cuba. And without tourism, the whole economic model collapses. No tourists means no dollars means no imports means no fuel, no food, no supplies. And that feeds straight back into the crisis. Now let's go back to the root of the problem, oil. Cuba's entire energy system is built around oil. Now that made sense decades ago because it had guaranteed supply. First from the Soviet Union, when Fidel Castro first took over the country, he was basically very close to the Soviet Union, and so they provided lots of free oil in exchange for things like doctors from Cuba. And then when the Soviet Union broke apart in 1991, Venezuela stepped in and provided a similar amount of oil for Cuba. But today, those supplies have largely dried up. And with the US blockade in place, Cuba is now struggling to get oil from anywhere. Obviously, it's not getting it from Venezuela anymore because the USA now controls Venezuela and Venezuelan oil. And without oil, there's no electricity because the electricity power stations have been built on oil. And alongside the lack of electricity, there is no transport because they haven't got any fuel, no functioning economy. You can see the impact everywhere. Gas stations are closed, not because they're waiting for deliveries, but because they are simply out of fuel. When small amounts do arrive, queues form instantly, prices spike, and most people still go without because they can't afford it. Roads that were once busy are now completely empty. Instead of cars, you see bicycles, horses, and carts. It's like the country is moving backwards in time. In rural areas, it's even worse. Farmers can't get fuel to run their machinery, they can't transport crops, and some can't even reach their own fields. So agricultural production is falling, which worsens the food crisis. And at night, the country goes completely dark. Entire cities in darkness, people walking around with torches or phone lights, that's if they have any battery left. Families cooking over charcoal fires, communities sitting in silence, waiting for power that may never come back. It's been described as Cuba going back in time every single night, back to a pre-industrial way of living, not by choice, but by necessity. So what's the objective here? Why is this happening? Well, officially the US position is about national security and applying pressure on the Cuban government. But it's also been suggested that restricting oil supply could destabilize the country enough to force political change. In simple terms, maximum pressure. But the reality is that pressure isn't being felt by politicians. It's being felt by the ordinary people in Cuba. And the big question is this: what happens next? Because right now, Cuba is stuck in a vicious cycle. No fuel means no electricity means no economy means no money means no imports, and that leads straight back to no fuel. And at the same time, people are leaving in huge numbers, hundreds of thousands, even over 1 million over the past few years, and that creates another problem because the people leaving are often the ones that could help rebuild the country. So what you're left with is an economy shrinking, a population declining and aging, and a system that's running out of options. And that's why this isn't just another economic story. This is a country reaching a tipping point, because without a reliable supply of oil, and without a recovery in tourism, and without some form of external support, this situation simply cannot continue. And that brings us back to the key point. Cuba isn't just short of fuel, it isn't just short of money, it isn't just short of food. Cuba is running out of time. So I'll keep you posted on any further news and developments as soon as they happen on this story, but hopefully you found today's video useful, informative, and most importantly, thought-provoking. If you have liked what I've said, or maybe didn't quite like it, but you thought it was interesting, then please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget, I'm currently running my competition where you can win my property or a cash alternative prize Hasn't got too long to run yet now, and I'm offering some really good deals at the moment. So if you'd like to get involved, scan the QR code on the screen now or click the link in the description below. It's a fun way of funding the channel. Thank you so much to everyone that's supporting me in other ways. If you've bought me a coffee or sent me YouTube super thanks or signed up as a patron or a member, thank you so much. It really does help to keep me focused and making as many videos as possible. I'd also like to remind you that the Joe and Naz channel is now live. This is where I've teamed up with one of my best friends to make some fun, exciting videos. And our latest video is about us trying a crazy invention, a roast dinner wrapped up in a Yorkshire burrito, which sounds crazy. It is, but that's exactly what you get. And they served it to us with a side order of gravy to drink. So if you'd like to have a look at that, it is a whole lot of fun, then please check it out. There's a link at the end of today's video. It will take you straight through. We're not actually at the point where we've monetized yet on the channel. We need more view time, more subscribers. So if you could help me out by going over, watching that video, maybe watching some of the others, subscribing to the channel, I would really appreciate it. And in the meantime, that will put a smile on your face. But in the meantime, here is something else that will also put a smile on your face.